A live munition sat beneath an A-10 as a weapons load crew member checked its placement. The crew needed that verification before completing the load. The photograph was taken at Osan Air Base in South Korea on November 14, 2011 during 𝗣𝗿𝐺 Bulldog 11-03. The exercise tested whether the base could continue operating under simulated combat conditions. Around the aircraft, the loading team followed the procedure assigned to that weapon station. Another image from the exercise shows a panel held in place as a second crew member secures it. The work around the jet moved through a defined sequence. Each completed task allowed the loading operation to continue. The weapon had already passed through the Air Force munitions system before reaching the aircraft. Conventional munitions are managed through the Theater Integrated Combat Munitions System known as 𝗖𝗃𝗋. The database records the current status of each managed weapon as it moves through the system. Air Force guidance sets a 1-hour goal for processing those changes when the available technology supports it. 𝗖𝗃𝗋 gives the next section a current record of the weapon entering its workspace. The database follows the asset through maintenance and movement. The load crew can use that record as it performs the physical checks at the aircraft. Assembly begins earlier inside facilities such as the munitions flight at Misawa Air Base in Japan. On October 31, 2024, the 35th Fighter Wing Command Team worked with inert 𝗤𝗂𝗃𝗲𝗯𝗯 bombs under the supervision of munitions crew chiefs. The 𝗤𝗂𝗃𝗲𝗯𝗯 combines a 500-pound class Mk82 bomb body with a JDAM guidance tail kit. The inert components allowed the visitors to follow the assembly under training conditions. The completed shape represented the configuration later delivered to an aircraft weapons crew. The tail kit contains GPS-aided inertial guidance. Its presence changes the bomb body into a guided weapon built to reach assigned coordinates after release. That capability begins with the physical assembly performed inside the shop. Crew chiefs controlled the demonstration as each inert round took shape on approved handling equipment. The technical data defined the configuration. The finished weapon had to match that configuration before leaving the shop. The same visit included an inert Mk84 bomb body in the 2,000-pound class. Its size requires handling equipment built for the weight. The work area keeps the bomb supported as technicians position it for inspection or assembly. Stored weapons remain subject to scheduled inspection. A qualified technician examines an item when its inspection date arrives. The result determines whether the weapon remains available for future tasking. The magazines surrounding that work sit within an explosive site plan. The explosive quantity inside each location determines the open ground required around it. That distance forms part of the safety design of the compound. Aviation fuel reaches the flight line through its own quality control facility. At Travis Air Force Base in California, the fuels laboratory tests the aviation fuel used by one of the Air Force's largest mobility hubs. The laboratory examines fuel before it enters the aircraft's distribution system. A sample arrives in a clear container. Laboratory equipment measures whether the batch meets the required standard. Technicians also confirm that the fuel contains the correct concentration of approved additives. A failed result keeps the batch from moving toward the flight line. The additives support safe operation inside aircraft fuel systems. Their ratio has to remain within specification as fuel moves through storage. Laboratory testing also detects contamination that could enter during delivery or handling. Every delivery pauses at quality control before entering bulk storage. A technician draws a sample from the arriving fuel and carries it into the laboratory. The sample is placed in a clear container, then disturbed to bring suspended water or sediment into view. That visual check gives the laboratory an immediate look at contamination that could remain hidden in a quiet sample. Further testing confirms that the fuel matches the required specification. The laboratory records the result before the delivery is released into the base system. A batch that fails remains segregated from the approved supply. This control continues after the fuel enters storage. Samples are taken again as the product ages or moves through distribution equipment. The laboratory can trace a quality problem back to a tank or delivery point before the fuel reaches an aircraft. The process gives the flight line a verified product. Once approved, the fuel enters bulk tanks and moves toward pump houses serving the ramp. Travis stores more than 14 million gallons of fuel at a time. Underground piping moves approved fuel from bulk storage toward pump houses serving the ramp.
The hydrant system can support several aircraft at once through fixed connections beneath the ramp. R-11 refueling trucks remain part of the operation. Each vehicle can carry about 6,000 gallons and deliver fuel far faster than a civilian gasoline pump. The laboratory's approval reaches the aircraft through those trucks or through the underground hydrant network. The fuel's flight demonstrated its laboratory equipment again in June 2026. The tools shown at Travis were used to monitor fuel quality and protect the integrity of products delivered to aircraft. The scene places chemistry directly inside flight line readiness. Software creates another maintenance requirement inside a fully assembled weapon. At Ramstein Air Base in Germany, technicians updated the software inside AGM-114 Hellfire missiles on June 23, 2026. The 86th Munitions Squadron performs this work as a munitions airlift hub for U.S. European Command. The missile entered the maintenance area as a complete weapon. Technicians connected the required equipment and loaded the approved software update. Ramstein's public documentation linked the work to technical accuracy across aircraft expected to carry the missile. The update changed the programming inside the weapon. A technician then painted the new reprogramming number onto the missile body. The visible marking identified the new software state now loaded into that specific weapon. The crew returned the missile to its container after completing the work. A seal protected the container from tampering during movement. The updated missile could then continue through the distribution system, supporting operations across Europe.
The Hellfire operation shows how maintenance has expanded beyond mechanical condition. A weapon can require digital work before shipment. The facility performing that work has to connect software control with the physical missile stored in front of the technician. At Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, the decisive check happens across an Armory counter. In 2019, more than 2,500 security forces members supported a missile complex covering roughly 13,800 square miles. Patrols left the main installation to protect facilities assigned to the 341st Missile Wing. Their firearms came through an armory that operated around the clock. The 341st Security Support Squadron ran the largest 24-hour armory in Air Force Global Strike Command at that time. 16 personnel worked 12-hour shifts to keep the room operating. Armorers performed function checks before issuing firearms. The person requesting the weapon also needed current clearance and qualification. A failed authorization check stopped the issue at the counter. The armorer examined the record for the defender standing in front of the secured room. A clearance problem kept the weapon inside and ended the issue at the counter. The firearm returned through the same controlled point after the shift. The armorer received it back into the inventory and accounted for the ammunition issued with it. The room maintained control through the entire duty cycle. The scale of the missile field gave this routine a larger consequence. A patrol leaving Malmstrom could spend its shift far from the main base. The issue at the counter established who carried the weapon before that patrol entered the field. Military readiness also includes aircraft that have already left active service. At Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, the 309th Aerospace Maintenance and Regeneration Group stores an average of about 3,200 aircraft across 2,600 acres. The dry climate helps slow corrosion as aircraft remain outside in long rows. Storage begins with preservation work. Openings are sealed against dust and moisture. Sensitive systems receive protection suited to the storage category assigned by the owning service. The aircraft then remains available for a future decision. Some aircraft become sources of parts. AMARC technicians remove components under formal work orders and technical instructions. Those parts return directly to an operational unit or enter the supply system for later issue. The stored airframe functions as a precisely documented source. Technicians travel to the designated aircraft and remove the requested component under an approved work order. For older fleets, AMARC often supplies hard-to-find replacement parts. During a recent 5-year period, the facility reclaimed an average of 5,000 to 6,000 aircraft parts each year. AMARC also regenerates or prepares roughly 100 aircraft annually. Regeneration can return a stored aircraft to flight or prepare it for another government mission.
2 B-52H bombers demonstrated the full path from desert storage back to active service. One had spent 7 years at 𝗤𝗏𝗃, another remained there for about a decade. Preparing a stored bomber for flight required technicians to reverse the preservation work and examine the airframe. The aircraft then moved to the Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex at Tinker Air Force Base for programmed depot maintenance.
Programmed depot maintenance reaches deeper than routine flight line servicing. Tinker's workforce opens the aircraft for structural inspection and repairs damage found inside areas that crews rarely access during normal operations. The depot also incorporates approved modifications before the aircraft returns to its unit. For the B-52 fleet, programmed depot maintenance occurs on a 4-year cycle. The interval brings each bomber back into an industrial environment where the airframe can be opened for work beyond the reach of normal squadron maintenance. The depot uses that visit to extend service life and incorporate changes approved for the fleet. One regenerated B-52 arrived in Tinker in April 2020. The depot addressed structural defects around the main landing gear and completed extensive electrical work. The aircraft left in March 2021 and rejoined an operational bomb wing. The Oklahoma City Air Logistics Complex maintains a large industrial system around this work. More than 9,000 military and civilian personnel operate across 64 facilities containing 8.4 million square feet of industrial floor space. The complex performs depot maintenance on several aircraft fleets and overhauls engines used across the Air Force. The B-52 restoration moved from long-term preservation at 𝗤𝗏𝗃 into deep depot work at Tinker. That path gives the Air Force an option between building a replacement aircraft and accepting a permanent loss from the fleet. A stored bomber can become a reserve of usable structure, systems, and parts until the service decides its next role. Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado preserves command continuity. Construction began in June 1961. Workers removed about 693,000 tons of granite to create a complex covering 5.1 acres. NORAD's Combat Operations Center began working inside the mountain in April 1966. A tunnel leads to the steel blast doors guarding the inner chamber. Each door weighs roughly 20 tons. 15 buildings stand inside the excavated space beyond them. The buildings rest on more than 1,300 steel springs. The structures sit about 18 inches from the surrounding rock. That clearance allows movement during a severe shock and reduces the force transferred into the operating spaces. Cheyenne Mountain served as NORAD's main warning and control center during the Cold War. Routine command operations later shifted to Peterson Space Force Base. The alternate site has to receive a command staff with working communications. In 2024, an engineering team installed more than 3,000 feet of secondary fiber optic cable inside the complex. The additional route gives the operating floors another connection when the primary path fails. Emergency power supports the same transfer. During a grid failure, the complex can separate from the external network and place critical systems on diesel generators. Technicians rehearse the changeover during simulated outages. Crews train inside the actual facility and learn the operating floor before an emergency relocation. During an October 2012 continuity exercise, the blast doors remained closed for 24 hours as hundreds of personnel worked inside.
Personnel slept on cots positioned in the entrance tunnels between shifts. A powered breathing device used by one participant had to be placed near an available outlet. The detail forced the exercise planners to account for the needs of people who would remain inside during a real relocation. The blast doors are operated every week as part of the facility routine. Their last closure for an actual contingency occurred during the attacks of September 11, 2001. Cheyenne Mountain keeps the alternate command location physically ready and familiar to the crews assigned to use it. Norway solves a deployment problem before Marines arrive in the High North. The Marine Corps Prepositioning Program Norway grew from an agreement signed by the United States and Norway in 1981. The original system reached operational capability in 1990. The Marine Corps adopted the current program name in 2004. Climate-controlled mountain facilities hold equipment intended to reinforce Marine forces operating in Europe. Norwegian personnel maintain the stored assets under Marine Corps oversight. The equipment remains near the region where it may be needed. Inside the caves, controlled temperature and humidity reduce exposure to Norway's winter weather. Maintenance can continue year-round in an enclosed workspace near the region the equipment is meant to support. This keeps the stored fleet close to northern training areas throughout the full storage cycle. Prepositioning separates the movement of personnel from the movement of heavy equipment. Marines can travel by air and receive vehicles already stored in Norway. The opening stage of a deployment becomes shorter because the vehicles have already crossed the Atlantic.
In January 2026, a 2-week cave draw supported preparations for Cold Response 26. More than 14,000 items left the pre-positioned stock for the exercise. Marines learned the joint inspection process used before equipment is issued. The inspection established the condition of the vehicle as responsibility moved to the receiving unit. Once accepted, the equipment left the cave network and joined the force forming for the exercise. Marine officials said the equipment in Norway removed more than a month from the deployment timeline. Cold Response 26 eventually involved more than 32,000 personnel from allied nations training across Norway and Finland. The stored fleet gave the arriving Marines immediate access to heavy vehicles near the exercise area. Their deployment focused on receiving the equipment and preparing it for field movement. The program continued after the exercise. In April 2026, Marines in Freegard cleaned equipment returning from Cold Response 26 as cave regeneration began. Technicians inspected the vehicles before the next storage cycle. Regeneration prepares the stock for another draw. The vehicle that entered the cave after the exercise could support a future deployment. At Osen, the weapons load crew accepted the position of the live munition beneath the A-10 and continued the loading procedure.